Hello and welcome back to Champions and Beyond. In this episode of What's in the Box, we're going to look at what you receive when you pay your hard-earned money and get the Captain America Hero Pack. So the first thing that you receive when you get the Captain America Hero Pack is a lovely poster with all of the additional rules and information on the back for how to use Captain America and if there are any special rules, that sort of thing. It also has his pre-con deck on there, but nice poster, nice piece of artwork to keep hold of, to do with whatever you end up seeing fit to do with it. So on to the cards. So first of all, you receive your double-sided Captain America Hero card. You receive his 15 signature cards. Now going forward, I will be doing a series talking about the heroes and their signature cards in a bit more detail. I have put some feelers out and we're going to get some special guests, other members of the community to come on and chat about their experiences with each of the heroes, positive and negative, and all that good stuff. So don't worry that I'm not covering these here. We're going to be covering that along with another person to be able to chat about them. Rounding off Captain America's hero kit, we have his obligation and his nemesis set, which is Baron Zemo. Put those to one side for now. So that is the core cards for Captain America. Now we can have a look at some of the deck building options that we get. So as this is the first hero kit, I'm going to let you know first how FFG do their hero packs and how the living card game model works for them. So any new cards that are received within a hero pack, they will give you a full playset of. So if it is a unique card, you'll get one copy of it. If it's a card that you're allowed up to 2 of in a deck, then you will have 2. Most cards are 3 copies for a deck. So when you get a pre-constructed deck, quite often you'll find the easiest way to get into deck building and start deck building is to pull out a few of the additional cards that you maybe don't need. Cards that you only need 1 copy of, that you don't need to have 3 of in your deck, and just replace those in and out with some other cards that you already own. That's probably the easiest way to get into the deck building. Now, having said that, there will be reprints for this pack. We'll go through the reprints first, and I'm not going to go over them in massive detail because we have spoken about these cards already. So the first one, obviously, first of all, Captain America comes as a leadership hero. The first card that was a reprint is Hawkeye, the Clint Barton version. You then get 2 copies of Make the Call. You get 2 copies of The Power of Leadership. You get an additional copy of Mockingbird. And you get an Energy, a Genius, and a Strength card. So there were 9 reprints within Captain America's set Obviously, because he was out so early on, but it's good for a new player starting out. You get a lot of new cards to play with. The first of those is Falcon. Now, Falcon is quite expensive. He's 4 cost, but he's 2 thwart, 2 attack, and 3 health. He has a response, so when he comes into play, you look at the top 3 cards of the encounter deck, of the villain deck, and for every one of those cards that's a treachery, you get to remove 1 threat from a scheme. So potentially you pay the 4, you get him out, you can remove up to 3 threat depending on what's on the top of the villain deck, and then thwart for 2. So he's a very good thwarty ally. He is the Avenger traded, and he is aerial traded, which aerial didn't have a ton of support by this point. There is cards later on that can trigger off aerial, but having the Avenger trait, there is definitely some cards in this pre-con deck that will benefit the Avengers. So overall, still a pretty good ally, even by today's standards. Still useful, especially when you want to help control that threat within leadership. As well as that, a big part of looking at those top 3 cards, because you place them back in the order that you saw them, so you don't change the order of the cards, but it means in a solo game you're guaranteed to know what the boost, how many boost icons, or what the boost ability will be when the villain activates against you next. You'll be able to see exactly what your encounter card will be, and you will also see what the boost ability or the boost icons will be on the next activation. So in solo, getting that knowledge beforehand can be very useful. So obviously he's unique, so we only get 1 copy of him, but this is leadership. We do get more allies. So we get Squirrel Girl. Now Squirrel Girl is a 2 cost, 1/1/2, but she also has a response. So when she enters play, then you get to deal 1 damage to every enemy in play, and that's regardless of whether or not they are minions in front of yourself, minions in front of your friend at the table. If you're playing against Ultron and you have 3 Ultron drones against you, your friend across the table has 2 in front of him, she'll come in, she'll clear out all of those Ultron drones and ping a damage to Ultron before she even activates. 2 cost allies, very useful within the game. And again, Avenger traded. That will be a target for cards later on in the pack. Still seen as a very good ally because she only costs the 2, getting her out for cheap, just doing one thwart, 1 attack after her ability, and then being a chump blocker is almost a no-brainer for certain leadership decks. Our next ally is Wonder Man. Now, Wonder Man is also 2 cost. He is a 1/3/3. He does have a interrupt, which means that for Wonder Man to attack and make the most of that 3 attack stat, you are required to pay an additional card out of your hand. So this will bring his overall cost up if you do want to use him as an attacker. Depending on what kind of build you want, he's not going to be one that you want to use all the time. But even so, as a 2 cost to come in, thwart for 1, and then block an attack is just as useful as Squirrel Girl was previously. There's also been Avenger traded, just like Hawkeye was as well in the reprints. Although it is worth noting that for Captain America's pre-con deck, Mockingbird and Agent 13, which is his signature ally, are not Avenger traded. Now, talking about the Avenger trait, here is where it starts to come into play. So you get 3 copies of Avengers Assemble. It's a 4-cost event, which is quite expensive, but you get to ready every Avenger character you control, and that character gets +1, gets +1 thwart and +1 attack for the rest of the turn. So potentially, if you've already swung with Captain America for 2 and all your allies, you can use this, ready everyone back up. Everyone has +1/+1, and then you can still use Captain America's I can do this all day ability to get a second use of that boosted stat range. Especially when the game was primarily Avengers, there were a lot of builds really focusing in on Avengers Assemble and building your board state out with a ton of allies to then make the most of an Avengers Assemble and try and rush down the villain that you're facing with a lot of damage as your final actions. We then go on to Strength in Numbers. So again, you've got 3 copies. This time it's a 0-cost event. Strength in Numbers can still be a very viable card when you do the Ally Swarm build. So you're going to aim to get as many allies as you can out onto the board, and then you can use Strength in Numbers to exhaust every one of those allies and draw cards up until that amount of allies. Combining it with Avengers Assemble, if you can get board state of 3 or using Triskelion from the core set or using a card later on, you can get up to 4 allies out. You can Strength in Numbers, draw 4 cards, and those 4 cards would then pay for your Avengers Assemble, bringing them all back and giving them all +1/+1 for you to then use them the way that you were going to in the first place. Already some very useful additions to the core leadership, which, although it was playable, it definitely needed some more allies to start fleshing it out. The next card that you got, again, 3 copies, but you got Quinjet. Now, Quinjet I have found more useful for low hand size heroes. So the likes of She-Hulk in hero form, or later on Hulk or Drax, or even Iron Man early game when he's not fully built out his tech and has a low hand size. Quinjet can be quite useful. One, it's a support card. You pay 1, you put it out onto the table, and at the start of every turn you're going to put a counter on the Quinjet. If you have an ally in your hand that matches the amount of counters that are on Quinjet, then you can just put them out into play and discard Quinjet. So if you can get one out early and it gains up to 4 counters, as soon as you get Falcon in your hand or Vision from the core set, you can just discard one of these and get those allies straight out onto the board. As I say, lower hand size heroes that are playing leadership tend to be the ones that favour the Quinjet a little bit more, purely because it's a low resource cost to then get a bigger ally out. The downside is you have to wait the turns for the Quinjet to start to build up the counters. There's definitely a place for it. I really enjoyed it when I played Hawkeye for a while. Having this as a way to get the allies out when you're then wanting to spend your resources on his arrows. So almost any hero that wants to be spending their resources on something else can find this useful to help you still get those allies out. Now that ends the leadership cards that it came with. So we got 3 new allies and 3 new options, 1 support and 2 additional events. He then came with some basic cards, and the first one is Honorary Avenger. Now, Honorary Avenger works by attaching itself to an ally that you control. That ally will gain the Avenger trait. So I said about Mockingbird and Agent 13 previously, not being Avenger traded, so therefore not synergizing with the Avengers Assemble, especially. This is a way for you to make those allies an Avenger. The ally gets +1 hit points and gains the Avenger trait. One thing worth noting, you have to be an Avenger to play this card. So while you are flipped over in Steve Rogers form, you are unable to play Honorary Avenger because as Steve Rogers, you are not an Avenger. Now, a way around this, you can flip to Captain America, play one of these on yourself, which will give your hero +1 hit points, and when he flips down, so when you are Steve Rogers, you will then still be an Avenger, which would allow you to play the other 2 while you're an alter ego. It's just an interesting little mechanic, little interaction that might be worth thinking about, especially if you have more cards that work based on you being an Avenger. It will just add to a little bit of extra consistency. The next card you get, and the last card in his 40 card pre-constructed deck, is the Avengers Tower. Now it's a 2-cost support. If every ally you control has the Avenger trait, then you can now have 4 allies. You get +1 ally size. So this again helps with the ally swarms, but also you can exhaust it as a resource generator to generate a resource for an Avenger ally. So all of a sudden, Squirrel Girl is going to cost you 1, Wonder Man is going to cost you 1, Falcon can cost you 3, Hawkeye can cost you 2, which will obviously allow you to do more on your turn. Just by paying that 1 less resource, you have an extra card in hand, which will always allow you to do, I can do this all day in Captain America and ready up and do a second activation. Very useful support early on. It was nice to see an additional basic support. So as well as the leadership cards that you got, you did get a copy of an upgrade and a support for basic. After you get to that stage, you'll find a card that says stop. On the back, it will have the pre-constructed deck in case you ever want to go back and rebuild the pre-constructed deck. And these are similar to the cards that you got in the core set for Captain Marvel and for Spider-Man. Behind the stop card, we got some additional deck building cards for other aspects. So for justice, you got the card Followed, which is a 1-cost upgrade. You can attach it to a side scheme, and whenever that side scheme is defeated, this can then trigger to deal 4 damage to an enemy. So it's rewarding you for doing Justice's job by removing threat, and it's helping you out by dealing extra damage, which is Justice's weakness. This was really the first card that started with the side scheme archetype. So playing Justice and wanting side schemes out and getting bonuses for getting them out and dealing with them. This archetype took a long time to fully flesh out, but especially for the likes of, say, Expert Claw, in which case you're going to start with 2 side schemes out, you're going to be able to have a target for this from the beginning part of the game. So that was our Justice card. For aggression, we got 3 copies of Enraged, which is again a 1-cost upgrade. This is another upgrade that you can add to allies. So the attached ally will get +2 attack, but as a result will take an additional consequential damage. So aggression will just be dealing more damage. It's just a way for aggression to beef up their minions without really straying away from what aggression wants to do, which is just pump out the damage. There were definitely some good targets out there to use Enraged on. For protection, you got your 3 copies of Expert Defense. Now, Expert Defense was a defense card, so again, trying to build on what protection wants to do by defending enemy attacks and preventing that damage. 0-cost event, and when you defend against an enemy attack, you're going to get +3 defense for that attack. So it is an interrupt. So Ghost Spider, Spider Gwen, much later on, really likes this card. But again, protection and leadership, I think, were the 2 weakest aspects in the core box. Even though leadership is arguably one of the strongest aspects in the game, and protection is probably one of my favourite aspects in the game, but they were probably the weakest aspects when you bought a core box of Marvel Champions. So just having an additional option was going to be useful to help you play protection. The final card that you got, again, 3 copies, that was Enhanced Awareness. Now, this is a 2-cost upgrade, and it comes in with 3 counters on it, and it is going to drip feed you. It's a resource generator. It's going to drip feed you a mental resource each turn for 3 turns before it goes away. Now, the card is going to cost you 2, plus the card in your hand when you play it, so its true cost is 3. The best way to look at these cards are if you have a hero that really needs a specific resource type. So, for example, with the mental resource, Tony Stark, Iron Man, wanting to go aerial, you can have one of these out. You aren't gaining any benefit because you're paying the resources up front to get them over the next 3 turns. but you are able to swap resources that you have in your hand, which could be anything. If you build a deck all around, say, the energy resource, which Tony and Carol Danvers both like, if for any reason Tony is the obvious one, because Tony would like the mental resource to go aerial, it will allow you to still have mostly energy resource in your deck for your repulsor blasts, while still being able to go aerial and still being able to do your supersonic punches. Again, early on, this card had its place. A lot of people still overlook it, but especially the other real use you can have for them is if you want to have a deck that is all of one resource type, like Carol Danvers, like Tony Stark, like Thor to a certain extent, and like Hulk. Hulk loves to have all physical resources. But if you're going to come up against a villain that has attachments that require a certain resource combination to remove those attachments, these can be quite useful. So Claw, I believe, has 2 different attachments that require a mental, an energy, and a strength resource. So one of each of the 3 types. If your deck is completely built around just having one type of resource, throwing one of these in as a spare and one of, later on we get other copies for other resource generators into your deck, will just allow you, if that nasty attachment comes up, that you can exhaust the 2 plus spend one of the other resources at your hand and be able to get rid of these attachments that are causing you a bit of trouble. So there are a couple of uses. Sometimes you have to think slightly outside the box to find the uses for these cards. I hope that gives you a couple of ideas as to how you can make the most of this card. And that is it. That is all of the cards that you received within the Captain America Hero Pack. Now, as I said before, we will do a series talking about the actual hero, and I'll go over some more thoughts and opinions on that hero, as well as having another member of the community come in and chat with me and give their thoughts and opinions. This pre-constructed deck is probably one of the best pre-constructed decks that they've ever released for Marvel Champions. There are a few that were very good, and this one is definitely one of them. So would I suggest picking it up? If you're enjoying Marvel Champions, if you want some additional content, if you want some additional deck building options, this pack will help you increase your options for leadership, especially. It helps start up certain other archetypes. It helps you think about different ways about using your allies. As much as any pack is within Marvel Champions, and no pack is a must buy, but this one is as close as you're going to get to a must buy pack when you're collecting Marvel Champions. Thank you very much for watching today. If you like my content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, happy gaming.